Perhaps most stunningly of all, everybody said he couldn't refuse to accept the results of an election, kind of organise a riot to take over the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021 and get away with it. Well, he got away with it and then he got elected. So he's gone through politics in the last decade, I think, doing things that people said couldn't be done. So many of those things shouldn't be done, but nonetheless, he's done them anyway.
Time to head to the comment pages of the Times and catch up with the Wall Street Journal editor-at-large. This is Gerard Baker. His latest comment today, he's been looking at Donald Trump's favourite word, tariffs. The Times columnist Gerard Baker joins me now. Jerry, good afternoon.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You've said Donald Trump's breaking every rule and winning. I mean, talk us through the rules that he's sort of done away with.
Well, so as I say in the column, and thank you very much indeed for mentioning it, Trump has kind of built his entire political career, arguably maybe his entire career, out of breaking rules. We're very familiar with it. He was the first businessman to run for president, and everybody said it couldn't be done. He did it. Everybody said he couldn't possibly survive some of the most extraordinary, scandalous things that he's done, from, sex with a porn star to making obscene remarks about women's bodies on tape. Guess what? He got through that and he did it. Perhaps most stunningly of all, everybody said he couldn't refuse to accept the results of an election, kind of organise a riot to take over the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021 and get away with it. Well, he got away with it and then he got elected. So he's gone through politics in the last decade, I think, doing things that people said couldn't be done. So many of those things shouldn't be done, but nonetheless, he's done them anyway. And I think I think that's a way of thinking about how he approaches policy. So tariffs, everybody said tariffs are a disaster. They'll crash the US economy. They'll crash the world economy. The economy needs free trade. If you do this, it'll be an absolute disaster. And we saw that back in April when the market crashed when he announced his tariffs. Well, we're now 6 months in. We have tariffs, much higher tariffs than we've ever had before. So far, there's no huge damage to the US economy from it. People said, you can't speak to your NATO allies in the way that he did. You can't threaten them and bully them and appear to side with Russia. Well, he did that and he's finally got the NATO allies to spend some more money. I'm not saying it works everywhere. I'm just saying that Trump defies elite opinion, left, right and centre, and he seems to be having a lot of success with it. The question is, how much further could it go?
And he does it in the face of very loud opposition. Why do you think his strategy actually more often than not does tend to work?
Well, again, I think part of the problem is that what I call elite opinion, the sort of the establishment, the considered establishment view, unfortunately, just throughout history, and certainly in the last 20 or 30 years, has proved to be very wrong. And I think there is a kind of a groupthink that has gripped our elites, our political leaders, our cultural leaders on everything from, immigration, for example. Immigration is a good thing. We really shouldn't shouldn't significantly restrict it. Trade is a good thing. Globalization is a good thing. Those things have not held up very well. The most striking example of all, I think, is the global financial crisis in 2008. We were told before the global financial crisis that kind of economics was rather a settled business. Free markets worked, when there wouldn't be excesses because the markets were efficient and they worked very effectively. Well, in 2008, we nearly brought the world to a halt because markets were not efficient. So I think again and again and again, this received wisdom, these conventional orthodoxies have just been proved to be fragile. And I think you get someone like Trump who comes along and just says, you know what? I'm just going to do what I think is right. And, the received wisdom all says, wow, that's not going to work. And actually, he seems to be as right as often as they are.
Is it also because people appear to be too scared to stand up to Trump? If we look at tariffs, or maybe they are too weak to do it, it is only really China that got their elbows out and did what was threatened, that Liberation Day was going to cause this sort of escalating trade wars. Only China actually followed through and could action that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's a really good point, actually. I think part of it is, part of what Trump is doing is defying what used to be thought of as economic or political or international reality, right? And that's just, he's just doing that. That's just the way he is. Some of it may turn out well. Some of it may turn out disastrously, as people have said it would, but he's doing it. Some of it, though, you're absolutely right, is about exercising US power in a way that it hasn't been exercised in the past. The US, for the last 30 years, presidents of both parties have, broadly speaking, tried to build international consensus. They've seen the way to enhance American power, or rather to use American power. The best way to do that is to work with other countries, to seek international alliances, to seek kind of global cooperation. Trump comes along and says, we're the most powerful country in the world. We've got the biggest economy. We've got the biggest military. We're tired of being, of kind of constraining ourselves, like Gulliver being constrained by all these Lilliputians around the world. We're going to throw our weight around. So whether it's with the European Union, with regard to that trade deal that he did last week, a very one-sided trade deal, whether it's regard to NATO, and getting NATO to spend more on its defense, whether it's regard to Canada and threatening Canada with being the 51st state, he can do that. You're right. With a country like China, which is a country almost as powerful as the United States, an economy, the United States economy is heavily dependent on China. He has less success. But what we're seeing is a willingness to exert American muscle by this president in a way we haven't really seen in the last 30 years.
If we take the kind of contrasting approaches, Canada have tried to be tougher with Trump under Mark Carney. That hasn't played that well in their favour with the trade deal they've managed to sign. But if we look at what the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has done, when they had that first visit in the Oval Office and the Prime Minister came with his letter from the King, and there was a lot of criticism to say, look, the Prime Minister appears to be sucking up to Donald Trump. But a few weeks later on, we take stock at the tariff agreements everyone's managed to come to with the US, and you think, right, maybe this sucking up approach has actually served us best and better than everyone else.
I think that's right. Look, whether it's Starmer coming, crawling into the Oval Office, waving that invitation from the King to a state visit and making Trump feel very big with that, or whether it's Starmer literally going down on his knees and picking up those papers at the G7 meeting when Trump dropped them. I mean, look, those are symbolic things. I don't mean to overstate them, but the substantive reality, and I think I have to say, Keir Starmer, who is beleaguered on many fronts and in lots of ways deserves a lot of the criticism he gets, I think he's playing a bit of a blinder as far as Trump is concerned, because he has recognized, first of all, he's in a comfortable position because Trump likes Britain. He loves Britain. We saw it last week on his trip to Scotland. He loves he's got Scottish blood. He has this sort of a bit of a thing for elegant English men and attractive English women. It's just the kind of cultural thing that he has. And so Starmer's already starting with that advantage. But then I think what Starmer's acknowledged, and with the help of Peter Mandelson, his ambassador in Washington, is the way to get Trump on your side is to overdo the kind of blandishments and the flattery. And, that has worked very well. And exactly as you say, Britain ends up with a better trade deal than the one that the European Union got. So I think in a way, back to the point about, your point about, standing up to the US, if you have the power to stand up to the US, as China does, then by all means do it. If you don't have the power to stand up to the US in the way, frankly, the United Kingdom doesn't, then get your best possible deal by being as nice as you can to Trump. It's not very edifying. It doesn't look very good. It makes you feel a little bit kind of grubby. But actually, in the end, it's better for the country.
And what does that say about Britain standing on the international stage as well?